our focus areas have been policy. We've been working with the government in terms of coming up with a conducive policy for the startups and entrepreneurs, and we've helped them in giving a framework for the startup fund that has been announced. I am Bangalore, IIT Madras, IIT Hyderabad, and IIT Hyderabad, talking about various aspects, how their journey has been in building the incubation center on campus, and how do they inculcate the culture of entrepreneurship on campus. So post that we had we saw about 40 plus institutions participating in the event to understand about entrepreneurship, and post that we've been working with those institutions in supporting them with the curriculum to develop entrepreneurial mindset in the students and supporting their entrepreneurship skills. We also launched an angel network, and we did our first deal flow event a few months back. So we are just about to close our first investment. So we pretty much presented every aspect in an entrepreneur's journey in supporting them. So that's pretty much what we did in the last 1 year. And we've identified that the ecosystem here needs exposure to what's happening in the successful startups, and how the journey of entrepreneurs has been in building these startups. So we thought we get some of the entrepreneurs or people working with startups to come and talk about their journey and their experiences as working with them. So that's how we started this speaker series, and this happens to be the first edition. So I invite Mr. Satish Chandra, the host for today's event.
Thank you, Andeep, of his time. It's a voluntary organization. I'm the president of TiE. I've been part of TiE for almost 20 years, right from Silicon Valley days. Quickly, I won't bore you telling too much about TiE, but it's in 18 countries, 60 cities around the globe, 10,000 entrepreneurs, and 2,000 charter members. The charter members are by invitation only. All of these people are successful entrepreneurs. And TiE's focus is networking, because when you network people, energy flows, ideas flow, they learn from each other. Then the second thing is about mentoring. It's extremely important for startups to find good mentors. Third is about education. Except Babson or maybe a couple of schools out there in the world, there aren't structured entrepreneurial education programs. You'll see finance, you'll see strategy, you'll see marketing, and you'll see information systems MBAs, but you don't see entrepreneurship MBAs. It's just beginning now. So TiE, obviously delivers the education in a classroom-like setting. The fourth thing is facilitation of funding that got added recently. So it's networking, mentoring, education, and facilitation to funding. And those are the 4 pillars, and we're working on all those aspects. We have 2 people here to my left. Ravi Garikipati. Ravi heads all of financial services business for Flipkart. He's son of the soil. Not trying to be chauvinistic, Rajesh. Don't hate me. So Ravi was CTO before he took on the role of heading all of financial services for Flipkart. I've known Ravi from the Bay Area days. We're going to hear more from him. To my right, we have Rajesh Sawhney. Again, I have good fortune of knowing Rajesh for more than 15 years now. He is someone, I think, who started the whole internet revolution in India. He was the CEO of Times Internet, actually India Times, one of the first internet companies, then went on to run all of Reliance Entertainment, and post that started a very successful accelerator called GSF. I had good fortune of investing in a company along with Rajesh called Little Eye Labs, the first company and the only company from India that Facebook bought. And Rajesh is a prolific angel investor, now is also a founder of a food tech company called Inner Chef, and he's running an accelerator here called Gastro, right? So I'll let Ravi and Rajesh maybe talk about a few things, their own journey so far, and then I'll ask them a few questions. We'll have a Q&A, and we'll open it up for Q&A from the audience. Rajesh?
Yeah, so I think we are lucky to be living in this time. Really privileged. Remember when I started internet building something in 1998, this voice tick, tick, tick. This is how internet used to come. This is the voice of the modem you'll hear. This is how bits used to come to my computer. And we even had to build AWS type of servers ourselves. There was no infrastructure. There were no mobile phones, or at least good mobile phones. And everything the entrepreneurs had to do everything. There was no angel investing. And that was the first era of internet entrepreneurs that happened. And then I started GSF 6 years back. It was still difficult. There were a few VC funds. Internet was there, but still not as good. Of course, Flipkart started to make some mark and change in the e-commerce behavior. But last 5 years have been totally mind-blowing in a way in India. And I think the biggest driver has been the access that every Indian consumer now has through mobile phone and Jio or Jio equivalent. I think the launch of Jio changed the access available, cheaper, and they solved that problem in a dramatic way. The second big change happened with Paytm. It solved the payment problem of the country, and they got a big boost with demonetization. And I'm sure now they have a big competition from PhonePe, which is good. But I think that was transformative for India. Micro payment problems, and these two developments in India have changed the paradigm, and that's why I say we are now in a lucky era. Right, the backbone or the infrastructure is there now. Also, lot more funds. There were 5 funds in 2000, and now there are over 100 funds. Still not enough, but at least you can go to people. There are about 500-700 good angel investors you can reach out. So what has happened? What has changed? It's become easier to start, or it has become even easier to fail. Right? So social dogma has gone away from failures. If you are smart enough, you will easily get some angel investing. You can get started on AWS servers, free of cost. If you have with GSF, you don't have to pay anything for 2 years. Just you need smarts and courage, right? Nothing else is required. So that's why it's a beautiful time. And then you have state governments like Andhra Pradesh government, who built this beautiful place and even more beautifully called it Innovation Valley. And I'm really hoping that this will become the Innovation Valley of India, like we have Silicon Valley in US. So welcome to the new era. We can chat further.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh. Ravi?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. A real pleasure to be here. I don't know why I had so much beauty to offer, and having a setting like this and having a chat about entrepreneurship, that in itself is a revelation for me. And just want to add to what Rajesh had said. The couple of drivers, one of which is obviously access that we talked about, and I think the likes of Geo done enough to proliferate access to underserved, unserved segment as well. I think another thing we should probably add in that mix is the scheme that Prime Minister Modi had introduced ever since he came on board, which is the Jan Dhan Yojana. I think that program sort of brought in at least few hundreds of millions of bank accounts, and that digitization is a reality now, not just on the payment side. And then, of course, India Stack is another big breakthrough. Some of you may have been familiar with that. And I think another came out of India Stack and unified payment interface, on the back of which is what the PhonePe built its own payment engine. And there are many such initiatives that are in the offing as well as part of India Stack. So that's the soft infrastructure that's missing for longest time, and we can't realize, we can't overemphasize the importance of what that brings to the table. And then the second thing, I just want to reiterate what Rajesh has mentioned, especially going back in time of my entrepreneurial journey. First 10 years of my career, that was largely late 80s and early 90s, spent with IBMs and Oracles in the Valley. And then post that, we got into startup journey. And in order to start something there in those days, no matter how good the idea is, one would have to really find ways to get hold of a capital, right? And the capital I'm talking of is a substantial capital. We're talking of not commodity hardware, not a open source software stack. It's all proprietary stuff, and manufacturers such as Sun and IBM and HP's, they made tens of billions of business, and then they have this licensed software. So you have to sort of bring all of it together. It's not good enough to have a great team and a great idea. You need to have that infrastructure, soft and hard, to get something going. Now, all of that has been taken out of the equation. It sort of made it very easy for all of you. And then another thing that I keep reiterating to the youngsters is the cost of failure in this day and age is absolutely zero, right? There were times when I look at a resume, I'll speak for myself, and I used to entertain a little bit of prejudice, 15, 20 years ago, when someone, took a break from college and pursued his entrepreneurial gig, and then he wants to sort of come back and take up a job. People sort of didn't necessarily understand the dynamic, right? They made their own assumptions. Perhaps he could not have gotten a job, what have you, right? All misplaced assumptions. But now, fast forward in this day and age, it's I can say without any hesitation, that will hold that experience, no matter whether it's a success or failure, will hold you in good stead, right? The kind of risk that you've taken, the passion that you have demonstrated, and the ownership that you had to sort of take on to pull off any entrepreneurial gig, success or failure, is unparalleled. I don't think any other person coming out of college working for any company would and I acquire that kind of experience. So you're regarded very differently, whether you're a manager or a leader or an employee, if you had a startup experience. And then the investment that you need to make to get something going is is not that prohibitively expensive. It's not that much of a deterrent. So, and that said, there are a few things that one would have to keep in mind. In this day and age, while the exuberance and the euphoria is sort of catching up, and which is a good thing, and but then you really need to sort of ask yourself some soul-searching questions, right? If you look at the opportunity landscape, whether it's Flipkart or new age startups, some of you are embarked on, it ought to be in the second tier, third tier. As you know, India is such a divergent place. There are many Indias within India. So you need to have a real good understanding of what India represents, what are those many Indias within India. And you need to really understand the problem statement that impacts that particular segment very intimately. And we can use all kinds of jargon, whether it's design thinking and basically validating your ideas with the cohorts of customer that you're interested. End of the day, it's about knowing your market and coming with a product that can effectively satisfy your market. That's what your design thinking will tell you, and that's what your product market fit. So you need to first and foremost get that in place. And secondly, we talked about the soft infrastructure that's available. So you need to be smart. Don't reinvent the wheel. I'm not talking about just physical infrastructure, even the soft infrastructure. And in this day and age, the big boys, the likes of Google and Microsoft and a bunch of other companies are coming to the fore. Yes, they have their vested interest and agenda, but it's a win-win symbiotic kind of a goal here. They're bringing their might in terms of computing and other value-added services. So you just have to get your head around the clear problem statement, that serving a clear need for a large enough segment, and then sort of leverage some of this infrastructure. And then secondly, as you know, a startup is fraught with its own set of challenges, and especially some of you I can see very young and maybe your first gig, and it's extremely important to sort of put yourself in the midst of ecosystem that will help you every step of the way. And when we say ecosystem help, we quickly translate that to access to capital, right? That's just one part of it. And there are other pieces that you need to focus on, and there'll be days when you're really gung-ho about what you're doing. There'll be days where you'll be picking yourself and as to, is this the right thing for me? And that's when you need to have someone that you can go to. You need to have your go-to guy, I call it mentor or coach, that you can go to get all kinds of help, whether it's making the right choices in our technology, or do you understand your customer well enough, or do you understand your market landscape, do you have a good go-to-market strategy, are you reinventing the wheel, are you sort of trying to do everything from ground up yourself, are you smart enough to leverage the ecosystem that's in place for you to have that multiplier impact. So some of these things, right, you need to sort of leverage and tap into the ecosystem. And the other thing that I would focus is even getting yourself the right team. Again, we oftentimes get bogged down with pedigrees and credentials, while some of them is pretty hygiene. But I think we need to go beyond that. We need to find somebody who has that character, who will align with your passion, your drive, and he or she will stick with you through highs and lows, and has that strong character and value, right? And that's something. Unfortunately, when we were doing some of these things, and we struggled. We made our own share of mistakes, and in hindsight, when I look back, these are some of the elements that we could have done or addressed differently. And fortunately, with the forums such as this, and leaders such as Satish and a bunch of other folks coming forward and trying to sort of institutionalize this whole mechanics and making it a very sustainable thing. And I'm very, very pleased to be here. And I also want to quickly acknowledge and thank the wonderful work that TiE Andhra Pradesh has done, probably the youngest in India. Just 1 year old, and I was pleasantly surprised looking at the long list of accomplishments that Nadeep had shared with all of us in 1 year history. This is a pretty big ask, and there's a lot more. I'm sure folks here sitting and saying there's a lot more to be done, and folks like Rajesh and myself and many more would not hesitate to do our own bit and make this a very vibrant community.
Thank you, Ravi. I just want to do a quick poll. How many of the audience are founders of startups? That's great. How many work for startups? May not be founders. How many of them work for startups? Good. So I think the entire audience is either we are founders or people who work for startups. What I want to do is just want to ask a few questions, Rajesh and Ravi. Rajesh will alert you. I mean, we're tracking your flight. If it is kind of on time or delayed, we'll alert you so that you get the right time. And Rajesh is someone who's going to be here, I think, maybe once at least a quarter, maybe. So once a quarter is going to be here. You can always catch him when he's here. And again, some of the deep tech stuff you can look at, and Rajesh had the experience of looking at technology as well as some of the non-tech as well industries. Because how many of you are from technology versus how many are from not startups that are not technology oriented? How many startups that are not technology oriented? Very few. So majority of them are tech startups. There are few. Agri. I think because everything is now a tech, agri-tech, fintech.
There is no business that is not started tech oriented.
Sure. No, when I mean, it's not so much using technology, to drive business, but core tech. So, I think the first question, right, for any entrepreneur is really about opportunity validation or idea validation. Whether they're working on the right idea, is that something that they should spend their life on? Are they doing the right thing? As much as, in India, we see a big startup wave, still startups are seen as a career risk, a social risk, and an economic risk, right? Because, you could go get a job, nice job somewhere, and be very happy as opposed to really struggling and building your own thing. I want you gentlemen to share, maybe just some quick tips to these entrepreneurs. How do they go about their idea validation to make sure they're on the right track? Rajesh?
Hi. So I have, through my experience of now seeing 70 startups and my own experience of running a startup, I think there are a few thoughts which I like to share. One is when you should start not when you're totally ready. You start when you're somewhat ready, right? And then you pick up your courage and your learnings on the way to perfect the model. So the basic question is, when do I start? A lot of people just tend to spend a lot of time just either figuring out, or getting a perfect idea or getting a perfect problem to work. It never happens in reality like this. So starting is very important. The second is, in the 70 companies, or most of the companies I have been involved, there is not a single company which has not pivoted at least once. Many have pivoted multiple times during their first 3 years. Most of them have pivoted. They start with an idea, they discover new things as you get inside, and the smart founders change the template of the business. So it's very important to be very clued on and keep your ears open and listen to your customers. So in VC terms, they call it product market fit. That there is a market you want to go out, there is a product with which you want to go out. Is that market ready for your product, or is that the right product for the market? Is what you're trying to figure out in your first 2-3 years. So, third, when people start figuring out this product market fit is more important than creating a strategy or a business plan, right? In fact, what you should be building in the first 1 year of the company is not a great strategy, not a great business plan, but culture and team, right? So I can share some of the examples from my own learnings. When we started Inner Chef, when Satish Pandey did, we were a very different company. Our original idea was a meal kits company, something like Blue Apron, right? That will cut, chop, prep dishes and we'll send a recipe card with it. You cook at your home. And then we realized it's not going to work for India. Right? India wasn't ready for it. It's an idea for the Western market. I gave it a good go and it didn't work. And then we pivoted to something else. And the other thing was, when I hit upon this idea, I thought I was the first one to hit upon this idea. When I launched, 20 other people had already launched. So this is the nature of the market. There is no uniqueness to any idea any longer. Right? What differentiates you is the execution when you launch. So why did we change? And then I'll give you the experience of one other company which came to me after a year. They continued with the recipe kit model. And after a year they came to me to sell out their business. And I met those two founders and I was sitting on this side. And when I looked at the profile of those two founders and the traction they had achieved by the time we gave up was more traction than us. And they were actually smarter people than us. And I asked them, I was looking at the consumer and I was saying, consumer is not ready in India for this business. What were you looking at? And why didn't you give up and change your business? And they said, sir, we thought, first time I failed, I need to go back to my investor, raise another 200K and give it another go. Maybe we didn't market the product well, right? They didn't see it as the product failed. They felt consumer is not ready. We need to educate the consumer more. And they gave it one more try. It still didn't work. I'm not saying I'm brilliant. What I'm saying is it made me very humble. Smarter people than me, younger, smarter, executing better than me, made a wrong decision. Right? So this is what we deal with when we are in the startup world. We deal with these kind of life-changing decisions. So what sustained me during these 3 years was our culture. Because we never focused on meal kits as my business. I said my purpose is to put good food in the hands of billion. I didn't say meal kits is my business. So purpose sustained me. What also sustained me was a team which was aligned to our culture. And we built our culture around 4 simple things. We said, who matters the most? And we came to an answer, customer. Are we delighting our customers every day? Right? And is the company aligned to that? That was first. Secondly, we said, who matters second? People who are delivering this delight to the customer, employees. So what can I do for my employees? Well, how can I create a place where they love to come? And it's not always about stock options and salaries and stuff. It's the respect that you give to your employee. The sense of purpose that you create in them. Third, I said, what matters? I got employees, I got the customer. We decided execution. Ours is execution-centric business. We need to execute every day. Each meal needs to be perfect. We held that as our 4th pillar of culture. And finally, we said, products will come, change, consumers will change. How do we remain sustainable? We said through experiments. We cannot just stay in one market with one product. So these are the 4 things that have helped us to sustain our business. So to just sum up, start before you're ready. Start in a flexible way to change multiple times. And don't get over fixated on this is my baby, this is my product, or this is my business plan, or this is my strategy. All of that change, focus on your team and culture. I hope it helps.
I think that's great. Ravi, do you want to add anything in terms of any tips or any learnings about idea validation? I'm sure even in large companies, you launch new businesses, right?
I think Rajesh covered pretty much everything. He summed it up beautifully. I think I'll take the other question. How does one bring a new idea to the fore in a larger company setup? But just to sort of add one quick thought to what Rajesh said, I think fundamentally it boils down to you wanting to solve something for the customer, and that you understand the customer pain point and you want to solve the customer pain point, right? You being an entrepreneur is a byproduct of that. You don't start up saying that I want to be an entrepreneur and this is my idea, now let me force fit into customer or the market, right? You have to flip it, and you got to be understanding the customer pain point, and that got to be big enough, and then rest will fall in place, right? That's the overarching thing, and I think the rest of the points very well articulated by Rajesh. Going back to how an idea gathers some momentum and picks up some steam in a bigger setup. I think it's, to be honest with you, once you get to that stage, it becomes a little easy, especially in the digital world. You have the quick access to your user base, and if you have a problem statement that you think you understand well for a few customers, cohorts, or segments, there's only so much value you derive just thrashing it out in a boardroom and ideating it. Just put it out there, right? Call it MVP, the minimum viable product, and focus on your target segment. Get quick feedback and iterate. You may get it right, or it may take multiple iterations, or the entire the data that you get will sort of suggest that your hypothesis is completely wrong and misplaced, and so you have to swallow that and the hard fact and move on and do something different. So I think my point is it's much easier once you have that sort of user base and ecosystem, and more so in a digital world,
right?
Putting an idea and getting a quick feedback is much easier.
Yeah. No, I think great insights. The key is for all the entrepreneurs out there. Often where we go wrong, and I've been an entrepreneur before moving to the venture capital world, is you need to look at what is the stated value proposition versus the implemented value proposition. Extremely important. Because when we define value proposition, we assume a lot of things. We think that this is how it's going to change the world or change life of my customer once they avail my product or service. But once you're able to roll out your product or service, you need to measure and say, is that truly happening, right? If it is truly happening, and then there are enough number of customers who aspire for what you do, then you've built a good business. That's one. The second thing is, in terms of, like Rajesh said, almost 90% of the companies, succeed on plan B. They start out with the plan A and then they succeed with plan B. But one has to realize very few companies succeed on plan C, which means by the time, they move from plan B to plan C, they do not have the third life. All of them have two lives. So it's extremely important to pay attention to that. Not that there are some examples where, in their fourth attempt or fifth attempt, they are successful, but there are very few of them. So you only have a certain amount of time, where you need to prove and kind of get to the critical mass. Also, all of you are very young, and there's nothing wrong in going and working for a good startup before you start your own company. The best that one can do is work for a very fast-growing, a good startup, and where you have access to founders, right? Every founder would love to work with us. First set of 50, 100, hires very closely. So don't lose that opportunity, because you get to learn so much, and then you can go do things on your own, right? We'll move now. Any questions on validation, idea validation? Anybody has any question? Or should we do the Q&A in the end? Yeah, we'll go to the end. Now, building teams, Rajesh. Building teams, bringing people, how do they go about it? Because you have, it's your idea, you've started, you love it, you want to do it, and how do you convince others to join you in that journey? And sometimes people you need with complementary skills, and you need to put a real good team together. So you want to share some of your experience?
So I have found that the most successful entrepreneurs are good at two very important things. One, they attract people. People gravitate to them. They're people magnets. Great people want to work with them, right? And the same thing happens with them. They're also very good fundraisers, right? They have the ability to charm and convince investors with their vision of transformation. They can come to Satish and say, look, this is the market I'm imagining. This is how I'll get there. They have a story to which they can align the world. But coming to people, this is in fact far more important than raising funds to my mind, right? Especially the first set of people who come and support you is very important attribute. So look, the way we did it, we at Dinner Chef for our corporate team and tech teams and stuff, till now, we're 65 now. We've not taken any headhunters to date. Everything is happened through word of mouth and referral, right? And we take a lot of time to hire people. It's not easy to get a job in Dinner Chef, right? Not that also because we can't pay so much, but also because we take a lot of time. Even if I was telling the GastroTop team, even if I like, sometimes you like a person on first meeting, right? First minute you know that he's the one for me. I curb my instinct and let the process take over. 5, 6, 7 times we meet, different people meet, and that helps us to know a lot more about the person before he joins. And for that person to know a lot more about the company before he joins the company, because early employee failure with startup is fatal. I want to minimize those risks. So I want to align those expectations, even though I like the person, right? He is the person for me. Why do people want to work for you? Mostly people want to work for you because they will learn a lot in startup. That's the prime reason for people. Also now people, but earlier it wasn't the case in India, but wealth creation is also becoming an objective with some people. I think it should become even bigger objective so that they let go of their salary expectation. It's not happened in India. But at least most people I have seen, they're looking for a dramatic change in the learning from what they were doing earlier in IBM or Oracle or wherever. The startups can truly give a transformative learning experience. And as Satish said rightly, you want to also work or as closely with the leadership team or with the founders, because that's what accelerates your learning. So if you offer that opportunity to the people, people want to come and join you. People also want to come and join you when they meet you and sense a larger purpose. So you must be good at telling a story to the people, conveying a sense of transformative change you want to build. If you just are 105th e-commerce company, oh, I'm a startup, it no longer excites people. But you're really doing something which will change the lives of millions of people is what excites people today. So people want to come to founders who have a larger purpose. People want to come to founders who tell them that they can work with me and change something. And finally, people also, reputations travel nowadays very easily. Before you join, you do a understanding how well that company is funded. You also see how the employees have been treated. If some employees have not been treated well, they will go pitch on the social media. So it's all out there. So all of this works towards hiring early employees. So be good at it and be honest about it. Build a great team that can take the pain with you of building something great.
That's very, very helpful. Ravi?
Yeah.
Building teams.
Yeah.
all of the above. And I think Rajesh talked about what gravitates folks to founder a startup. But let's spend a little bit of time in terms of what sort of people that you want to be able to sort of bring into your a startup, right? So, for instance, in a Flipkart, most people think, we go to, the premium or a premier Tier 1 schools and do a day zero placement, and it's just the academic credentials that we look at, and maybe that's one part of it. I think a bigger part of what we look at is the cultural alignment. I think skills and everything else in this day and age can be acquired pretty quickly, and that's pretty much a leveler. Right? I don't think there's a whole lot that one would have to invest to get to that level playing field. But having a cultural alignment is a very big thing, right? And that's where you need to focus on. For instance, Flipkart, just to sort of illustrate what we place high value, the ABC we call it, audacity, the big picture, bold thinking, strong bias for action, and the customer centricity, right? These values are percolating and traversing all the way from the top across all the nodes of the organization, right? And if you don't fundamentally believe that and carry that value set or a system with you, you would find a fair bit of misalignment, and all our actions are seen very differently. So as a founder, you need to ensure that the folks you are bringing on board are completely aligned to that, and that doesn't mean that's the only value system that works for every startup, and that's what we believe in. And you made a conscious call, and so you have to make sure that the folks you bring, especially the leadership team, when they imbibe the same values and they believe in it, and of course they will do their bit to populate it down as well, right? That's one. And the second thing, it's one thing to sort of go after the marquee talent, the talent that you believe is appropriate, but how do you sustain and retain them and have them perform sustainably at the same performance levels, right? That's where you also need to create an environment, the ambience that actually lead to that sort of a performance day in and day out, right? Why would one start a startup? There's no set hierarchy that you see in big companies, right? You're thrown into the into the pool, and deep into the pool, I might add, and of course we'll provide you support, but you expect to swim by yourself with the support that we provide. And that's not good enough. In the process, folks will fail at times, right? We have to create a culture where failures are celebrated as well, right? And I don't think there is any such thing called I got this right idea, right team, and we will hit the ball out of the park. So you need to be able to celebrate failures. In that do your retrospection in terms of what worked well, what didn't, and how do you actually avoid any such scenario from recurring in future, right? And so that's a kind of a culture. And the second thing, in a startup, no matter whether you're a founder, the idea is yours, at some point in time, you have to be able to find that strike balance and let go and let your people do the job for you. The command and control sort of a thing doesn't work. And it's more so when you're a small startup, your propensity is, I got to be there every step of the way, everything, right? And either you then, you've got the wrong team, or you got the right team, but somehow you're not empowering them enough, and then the innovation is largely top down, right? That doesn't necessarily lead to bottom up innovation. In this day and age, again, you sort of have to sort of involve every in a constant of your company to really come up with that unique innovation, right? And I'll go to the extent of even saying, slightly a matured startup, they should also focus on bringing some semblance of a D&I, diversity and inclusion, right? Imagine, if I'm just speaking for myself, a Flipkart mandate or a mantle is to go after Tier 2, Tier 3, and I've hired a bunch of folks who only lived in upscale Mumbai or Bangalore or Delhi, and they have no clue how average Joe in a tier 2, tier 3 shops or does commerce, he's not going to bring his best to the fore to align to that customer, right? And you want to go after certain demographics, certain ethnicity, and you don't understand the psyche and dynamics of that person as a team, you're not going to deliver a value proposition that aligns to that customer. So, building a team is not just looking at one dimension. Go to a best college, get a day zero placement, and then hire a smart team by doing some assessment, right? You got to take into cognizance some of these things, and that will hold the company in good stead.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. So, at least to recap, completely agree with Rajesh. I think while we all know that to sell is human and we're always selling, I think the best of the CEOs do a fantastic job of selling their vision, building to their team, to their investors, to their own families, right? And also they attract the right talent. Like what Ravi said, in terms of, unless you really involve all of them, it's very difficult to kind of be always, top down. One thing that I share from my own experience is that very often we're not honest to what it takes for our idea to succeed. If we go back and look at what are the critical success factors, and as a founder, what do I bring to the table? And if I map, and if I look at the gaps, you need to fill those gaps with the core team members, and that's extremely important, right? If there are 2-3 things that you need for your company to be very successful, and if you're able to bring in all those 2-3 things with your own skill sets, then you're really lucky. Otherwise, you need to bring this other set of people who have those complementary skills. Now we'll move to, of course, the very favorite topic of any entrepreneur. It's about fundraising. How many of you have raised any capital, angel funding or friends and family funding? How many startups have raised any funding? Very few. So how many want to raise funding? Okay, so there are quite a few. So I think probably, anything you want to share on what they should do about fundraising and how do they go about it?
So don't go to the VCs. Right now you're not ready. Raise a round which will help you to validate what you're building. When VCs come in, it should be the time when you're pretty certain about your product, your market. They want to see that kind of validation having taken place. This is the nature of Indian market. So essentially all of you have to build your seed rounds, if I've understood you right here. And some of you may even have to do, before you raise a seed round, raise friend and family round. Friends and family rounds are anywhere between 25 lakhs to 1 crore. Seed rounds in India are typically 1 crore to 5 crores. Typically you dilute in seed rounds 25-30% of the equity. Typically a seed round, if it's done by angel, consists of 5 to 15 angels in India. When you want to raise a seed round, you need first angel who will put largest amount. Let's say if you want to raise 2 crores, so you need someone who will be your anchor investor and put 50 lakhs. So essentially in any fundraising, the key is to find an anchor investor. Anchor investor is the one who believes in your story, is putting largest amount of the check in that fundraise, and also sets the terms of the round. The terms of the round is what is your valuation, how much would you dilute, what would be the board like. There are certain conditions on which investors invest in you. Fundraising in itself is a special subject, but these are some of the things you should think about. This is the Indian reality today. So also think about whether you're even ready for angel round. Do you have energy, expertise? If you're not ready, then prepare yourself by raising a small friends and family rounds. The meaning of friends and family round is a friend who knows you from your college, maybe is working in some good company. He puts in 5-10 lakhs, your parents put in 5-10 lakhs, your chacha, mama, someone puts another 5-10 lakhs. This money allows you to validate, build enough team, so that you can go to angel investors. So typically this money will last you between 6 months to 12 months. Typically when you raise a round, it should last you between 12 months to 2 years, ideally 18 months, because every time you raise money, it's 6 months process minimum. No one is willing to give money in India, but you show them your face and pitch and it happens. Even VC rounds take at least 6 months to 9 months. So be aware of what time frame it takes. Be aware of who you are when you meet an investor. Very quickly figure out whether he'll invest in you or not. Don't waste time. Secondly, figure out if he's going to invest, whether he's going to be an anchor investor or a follower, so that you understand how to approach him second time, right? Get your pitch right, get your elevator pitch right, learn to describe the purpose of your company within one sentence, and have a short deck ready, have a long deck ready. All of these are required when you meet investors, otherwise you're not prepared for it. I'm sure TiE would be doing extensive workshops on this idea. On this note, I need to leave. Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'll be again here and I'll let Vinuta know, and then we'll plan another session if required. Happy to help. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for spending time. Yeah, why don't we give it to him? Oh, Vinny wants to. Yeah. Vinny is here. Rajesh Vinny, I don't know if you met, is the CEO of Innovation Society. He was an entrepreneur himself.
Good to meet him.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you. I have a small token of appreciation from the government.
Okay. Give it to him. Yeah. She has a book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Done one?
Here is.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Investments. I don't know how many you have done. Why don't you share at least what you look for, when you make these decisions? When teams meet with you, talk to you, you've written checks. What is it that you look for when you are making these investments?
Yeah, so I'll definitely share what I look for, and I also want to give a little bit of perspective of what I'm seeing happening lately in the angel investment circle as well. So the reason why I want to sort of make that distinction is that just because I say a few things doesn't mean that typifies how angels go about making their investment calls. That's changing, and they are actually majority of them sounding and looking more like VCs in their approach. I'll nuance it a little bit later. Personally, from speaking for myself, I would write a check to only that problem statement that I understand very well. I mean, whether that may not be the criteria for every angel investor. First of all, I need to be very aware of that problem statement and something that I believe in. And post that, that's first and foremost, right? And the second thing that I look at is the team that's pitching that solution or idea. I need to develop a conviction that they understood the problem statement to the extent that they should, and much the way I've seen it, and or even better. So that I need to draw that conviction from the team. And third, of course, I would pay some attention to their solution, so to speak. But then I know for sure, once the problem statement is understood and you're asking all the right questions from the customer standpoint, the answers could be different from time to time as you sort of take your solution and get some quick validation going from the customer, right? So I don't think I will hang my hat too much on the solution that they're presenting at that given point in time. It's good enough to know that they are embarking on the right path. If they want to head to Mars, and they should be going to Jupiter, right? And as long as the glide path is towards Jupiter, Mars, I'm okay, right? I'm not looking for a perfect optimized path to get there in the first page. And then how well they understand what success means, right? Once you have a big problem statement, I'll also look for some sort of clarity in terms of how they're fleshing out what their 3, 6, 9, 12 months execution plan going to be. Right? There's a tendency, once you understand the problem statement, especially if it is open-ended, there's a tendency to boil the ocean. You sort of take on everything you possibly can. You're biting more than you can chew. And that's when you lose your focus, right? Focus equals to reality. So I also try to look at their comprehension of how they are taming the problem statement, and what's their roadmap going to be 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And what does success mean at each juncture. So those are some of the things I look at.
Sure. No, I think, I know a lot of you need to fundraise. Few things that you need to realize. One, I think the best way to fund the company, initial stages, would be, if you have some pilot customers who are willing to pay. Nothing like it. There's nothing wrong with that approach. If you've defined a product or service, and if your customers like it, and they're willing to pay you a certain amount of money, that's a great validation. And it's very easy for all of us to get tempted, right, when we wake up and read Economic Times every day, or look at the television channels, unicorns, companies raising hundreds of millions of dollars. It's very tempting, as to why am I not doing it? Someone else is able to do it. I think the most important thing for you is to make sure, like what Ravi said and Rajesh said, early stages, you don't have too much of visibility into future. You can't forecast what happens 2 years from now, 3 years from now. You can forecast what is going to happen the next 2 quarters, right? In one particular year, whether it's a calendar year or financial year, you know what metrics and milestones you're going to achieve. Here is when I'll roll out the product or service. Here is how many customers I'll sell it to. Here is the team that I'll build. So make simple milestones and assess what your capital requirements would be to achieve those milestones. Figure out if customers can partly fund that. If they are not able to, how much money you need. And then, like Rajesh said, you need to go and find those believers in you. And you have to be, you have to show a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of conviction. Should not take a no for an answer. One thing you should realize is that it only takes one yes, right? You may get any number of no's, it doesn't matter. It only takes one yes for you to kind of achieve your goal. And in the fundraising scenario, this is definitely true. Not many people will tell you their ordeal or their journey to raise money. They'll only share and say, oh, I pitched a few, I got the money. That may not be the truth. They may have talked to several of them might have rejected them. Don't take rejection, as failure. It may be just that they didn't like it, or it is not for them, and you have other avenues to go. So I think there are lots of videos out available on YouTube, and a lot of blogs, a lot of entrepreneurial stories on how to fundraise. Please read and kind of educate yourselves. Now, we talked about idea validation, we've talked about team building, we've talked about certain amount of fundraising. The question is, rolling out the product or service, how do you get the beta customers, the initial set of customers? What could entrepreneurs do? How do they go about finding those initial believers in their product or service? You want to share any of, again, a big company is very different because you've got an ecosystem that believes in you and ready to be a beta customer. But for a small company, first time rolling out a product or service, they have to go convince people to use their product.
So, yeah, I think a bunch of things could help here. This is where, the ecosystem will come into play as well, how well you leverage your ecosystem. Oftentimes when we reach out to investors, and ask for their check, it's not just to get your product built and ready to take it to market. You should also, find a way to sort of leverage their network and get them to sort of help you get in front of a potential customer. In this case, it could be a beta. That's one. And secondly, you also sort of have a good understanding of your customer base. And not every customer is alike. And there are some who is pushing the envelope and they are at the forefront of disruption. And they would leverage and partner with and someone like you in their pursuit of disrupting and transforming their business. So they more likely be your willing beta customers or beta partners. You need to first and foremost strike that alignment, and you see where they're going and how what you bring into the table will help accelerate their journey. If you look long and hard, you will find some of those. And then, of course, then your value in and itself should speak for most of the time in terms of why they should partner with you. But of course, the investors and your friends and the network can help you get there as well. Secondly, you also have to give a deep commitment. It's not like here is a product and can you partner with me? Can you be my early adopter? So you have to fundamentally internalize their bigger journey as well, and you need to believe in their bigger journey and their success as much as they believed or they convinced about, right? So it's not about just ensuring your product has a customer, but you also have to become an integral part of their pursuit or a journey. And then stay through the course, and maybe on first iteration your product may not be delivering the value, but then you go back and take that valuable feedback from the customer and iterate on it, go back to them and sort of continue that until you get to that point where there's a strong validation that it's working, right? So I think I've been part of a couple of enterprise gigs as well. That's what worked. And in this day and age, in the consumer realm, there's all kinds of creative schemes that are coming along and incentives and so on and so forth. But that's very transient in nature, and that will not hold you in good stead. And I think what makes most, because you're not looking at a number here. You're looking at a good representative of your customer base, representative of your customer base, whatever those customer cohorts are, and focus on the number, focus on the quality and the representation, and then create that incentive and give that commitment that you are wedded to the big picture, and this will be integral part of that big picture. It will actually enable them to get there, and then stay committed to that. And that sort of approach will get you success.
So let's do this. We'll open it up for questions. I think it'd be helpful if there are entrepreneurs who just identify themselves and talk about their venture, their startup for a minute or two, just their idea, what they're working on. And feel free, each one of you may have a question, right? Where you want to get an answer or where you want to brainstorm. And feel free to ask that question. And we'll be very happy to answer and then.
I've got a message in my WhatsApp group saying a C-level officer from Flipkart is coming to the event. So I was pretty much excited because I've been a very big fan of Mr. Sachin Bansal. So I'm one of those kids who have been inspired so much from Mr. Bansal and the other Bansal as well. So, sir, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the acquisitions and the mergers. Because, sir, when the Bansal set out to achieve, right? So this deal happened with Walmart, right? So, sir, I just wanted to throw some light onto the deal that actually happened. I wanted to take a dive into the minds of them, what they really went through, and were they satisfied, or did they feel they accomplished what they really set out to? That is my first question. And the second thing is, sir, what kind of an inspiration does an entrepreneur like me, who actually started up in his second year engineering? So I started very early in my career. So I started up in my second year engineering right after those big billion days, like 2014 and 15. So I felt I could create some value in the e-commerce space, in the digital space. So I'm one of those beneficiaries of Mr. Bansal's experiences. So what kind of an inspiration does a person like me, an entrepreneur like me, has to take from creating a product? Is it about just the exit, a profitable exit to the investors, a 10x exit to the investors, and a profitable sound exit to the co-founders, or is it about creating an impact and just handing out the product onto some Silicon Valley company who's just who's come with some vested interest? And third question is, since you are heading the fintech, the payments department of Flipkart, is an Amazon or a PayPal deal on the cards? Is it on the table? Because that is the norm right now. Because something is really taking off, people are actually inclining towards the Silicon Valley. I don't understand why people talk about Make in India right now when this a sound fat paychecks are just taking away all the investments from the country. So just wanted to answer in the chronological order, sir. Thank you.
So it's rolled into one. If I remember, if I forget answering any of those questions, you can bring it up again.
Sure.
By the way, the other one is Vinny Bansal.
Yes.
He had an equal part
Yes.
making Flipkart. I'm not surprised that you draw a tremendous inspiration from those two. I think most of the youth in India does as well. So testament to their contribution to startup ecosystem. Coming to your other question as to does it make sense for someone like Flipkart to partner with Walmart the way we did? First and foremost, we are very categorical, and so is Walmart in characterizing this transactions more of the change in shareholder pattern. Right, we had some financial investors been with us for a good length of time, and you can completely understand the reasons why they want to find some exit at this point in time. They've been with us for 10 years, and it happens every nook and corner in the investment circle. And the question here is, while that's one of the reasons why we would do, there's a bigger reason. First and foremost, to build an e-commerce business, the scale at which we are building, and where we have close to about 150 million registered users, and annually speaking, our active customer base is about 70 to 80 million. That number is getting bigger and bigger. You need deep pockets, let's face it, right? Unlike other businesses, e-commerce for startups requires deep pockets if you want to really build the big platform and scale that we aspire to build. And we also want to make this into more of a consumer internet company, ubiquitous platform for not just physical goods, but any digital services that we can distribute to various corners of India. So we need to raise the big capital, and at this juncture, the option that we have is basically continue to go look for a financial investor, or find someone who is in the retail industry, who understands commerce, not necessarily e-commerce as much as we do, but being in the same space. And I don't, you look long and hard, and I don't think you can find a better brand in a company than Walmart, who carries a few centuries of experience doing that extremely well. And they bring certain synergies in terms of their supply chain capabilities, running offline retailing, and so on and so forth. I think it's truly a marrying of minds there, that we bring complementary strengths together. And India is a great market, and for someone like Walmart to come in and bring their expertise, and at the end of the day, the customer should benefit from this marriage, and that's what will happen. Otherwise, this whole thing becomes meaningless, and we firmly believe that's the right thing to do, and we're convinced we are heading in the right direction. right? So it's more of a shareholder pattern changing versus being acquired or acquisition. That's how we want to characterize. The third, the thing that you, what is the other question that you had?
The inspiration that we need to take from a deal like that.
Yeah, so I think, you know, that we still in the business of serving the Indian customer. We still want to sort of, you know, make sure that we reach the tier 2, tier 3, the next 100 million customers we are not being able to service right now, which means we need to introduce many more categories, most importantly build many more technology capabilities and invest into hard infrastructure in terms of fulfillment centers and, you know, delivery centers and, you know, last mile capabilities and so on and so forth. So I think, you know, don't just, you know, look for capital alone, and that's obviously very important for a scale of this size. But in the process, if you can also get or find a partner who has been there, done that, dealt this kind of a scale, not just in one country but across various countries and geos, that should count. That should count. And within Flipkart, we're really looking to sort of, you know, make this you know, account and go places, right? And so, and he also said, you know, is it the trend? You know, now we are building. See, and I think, you know, it's not just in India, and it's a worldwide phenomenon. And end of the day, you know, there's opportunity out there. There are people out there bringing certain capabilities, and there's a customer expectations as well, and there's a competitive landscape, right? Now, whoever you know, gets there, understanding the customer expectation, delivering with quality at scale with consistency, is going to hold that leadership position, right? Now, you know, we need to figure out what are the pieces that need to come together to be able to get there. Is it a financial muscle? Is it you know, ingenious, our own native understanding of a customer and our own native innovation, and maybe best of both worlds. You know, if somebody else has done it well and done it exceedingly well, can we sort of, you know, piggyback on that as well? So in that construct, you know, anything can be possible, right? And you know, but people are not going to blindly accept a check from somebody because there's much more to it than what you see from outside.
And third question is regarding the phone pay.
So let people ask questions, right? So let this not be why did Amazon acquire someone or Flipkart acquire, right? Or got acquired. So I think that's meaningless.
No,
to me, it's important we can talk about it over a cup of coffee.
Sure.
Right? I think this is more for people if they have questions about their startups.
Sure.
If they're stuck somewhere.
Sure.
They need to make decisions. They need guidance. Then they should get up and ask those questions.
Sure.
I think you asked a good question, but you should go back and do homework as to how much money went into Indian e-commerce industry and what is the origin of that money. Where did it come from, right? And now, why did that money get deployed? Eventually, money wants returns, right? I think you should do that analysis on your own, and then you should draw some conclusions. Then absolutely you will have more questions. Yeah. So let's open it up. We'll come back to you. Yeah, thank you. So we'll come back to you. Let people who have questions, whether it's about team, getting customers, getting advisors on board, you know, the real questions while building startups, I think please ask those questions.
Hi Ravi, this is Venkateshwar Rao. We are basically it's not a digital marketing. What we are doing. This is based on the dust cleaning robotic systems. What we are invented and patented. We are ready to do the business. We have introduced in the market. We are having some customers, pilot customers. Now we are we want to scale up our business. What is your maybe idea or maybe your suggestion?
What is it that you are struggling with? What do you need?
One is funding, another is capturing a lot projects.
One is funding. What's another one?
Is a projects, capturing projects.
So I think some of this we covered earlier as well. The way I understood, you have a value proposition, and that's been demonstrated with a few customers, the early adopters, and are you at a point where you're able to deliver on your value prop to the customers, whatever you promised?
Yes.
And going in, you did what the way I internalize that is going in, you said this is what we'll do, and this is a very disruptive kind of a journey, and it transforms everything that you do so far, and this is the value you can expect from us, and you walk the talk there. You delivered all that.
Yes.
Right? You have a proof. And so now, how big you think the market is for whatever space? And I don't necessarily understand the market space well enough. Let's say it's big enough, and you have this validation, which is emphatic in nature and driven by data, not anecdotal evidence, right? And did you take it to the rest of the customers and have them see the value that you are providing? And is there any resonance or acknowledgement from the customer base, the prospective customer base, that if this is a step change or an order of magnitude impact for them?
Yes, we are going for new customers. We are facing one is competition with overseas maybe competitors. That is one problem we are facing now.
So that then it sounds like yours is not unique in that regard, and the same value can be delivered by a few others, incumbents. Maybe some of them are from outside India. So then you probably have to figure out what is your differentiation. Given that there's a few other players in the market, they're probably incumbents. They're already in the market. So you're competing against them. Then you need to bring forth your unique value that differentiates from the rest, whether it's a quality or a price point or whatever, the IP that you bring to the table. If that is well appreciated and acknowledged and endorsed by your customer, and the same thing holds good for many other customers, you need to find a way to amplify that and get others to see it. Then you'll see investors appreciating that as well. So if you haven't done that piece yet, and you're still for some reason struggling with the rest of the guys in the mix, you need to dig deep and see how you can actually differentiate yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ravi. It's a great maybe advice from you. Very thankful to you.
Thank you.
Very good evening, sir. I'm Siddharth from Robogen. It's very nice to see you here. And we work on the concept called STEM education, science, engineering and mathematics. So taking the concepts of maths and science, we teach technology through engineering concepts like robotics, 3D printing, animation. We're already into the market since September 2017, and we have increased 200% from first year to second year. My question is, what makes a successful market strategy? We are dealing with students of all ages, mostly all ages in the sense from grade 4 till graduation. So there are different market strategies like first thing, different market segment coming to the people who are very rich, people who are coming to in India. We have mostly middle class people. So in this case, what makes a successful market strategy to reach directly into the people?
Yeah. I think it goes back to brass tacks, right? That you are bringing to the fore. You need to understand the two pieces of the marketplace. At the end of the day, it's a marketplace, right? And you have customers and other stakeholders in the mix, right? So you have the demand, you have the supply, right? So let's say you are trying to shop in the raw supply, right? To be able to meet the demand that we have in the market, right? In this, trying to sort of bring your applied science and math to various disciplines without any specific regards to some other emerging demand. A few things can happen. You're just little bit, for lack of better words, while it's a very valuable thing for someone to acquire that skill, but they're still groping in the dark, right? What do I do with this skill that I acquired, right? How do I position myself? So I think, even as someone who is importing this stuff and sharpening the supply, what are you doing? You're stopping the supply to be able to better match the demand. So which means you need to pay a lot of attention to the demand as well, the demand side of the equation, right? And what are some of the emerging fields, right? That will largely benefit from this kind of a skill, and spend some time with them, right? What are their problem statements? What is that they're able to do themselves today, and what are their trials and tribulations in terms of skill and competencies, right? And then internalize that and shape your curriculum and sharpen your supply, so that way the likelihood of you seeing the marriage between supply and demand is much higher, and that would be number one. And secondly, that will also help you you focusing on few things, right? Otherwise you're just boiling the ocean and you just doing a bunch of different things, and people don't know at some point in time why they need to come to you, right? So that will help you also focus a little bit. I think that's what I think.
Just add to that, you need to figure out if you're teaching the core curriculum or you complementary to curriculum, right? So that's one. Two, extremely important for all the entrepreneurs, am I selling a painkiller or am I selling a vitamin? Okay, you need to understand, when people have very minimal resources, they only buy painkillers, right? Only after they're done with the pain, they'll invest in vitamins. So it's extremely important to be very honest in making that assessment of what am I selling. Third thing, I think you have a very wrong notion that India is full of middle class. The people who spend maximum amount of money on education are the middle class people, if you really look at it. The question is, how do you make it appealing to them? The minute you answer that this is very important and this is either core or complementary to the curriculum, then the distribution becomes very clear to you. If you're going to distribute using existing educational institutions, or if you're going to go direct to the consumer. So I think these things become very, very clear. So feel free, I think, offline, you could look at this, as well as the robotic system, to clean the dust. I think these are specific problems, and, depending on which market you're going after, you need to adopt a particular strategy, whether with respect to fundraising or customer acquisition. We'll move to the next question.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Prasad Babu. I'm the founder of Geoclimate Risk Solutions. Our company works in environmental risk management and solutions. And my question to Satish Garu. Actually, we already have the client base, and we are already providing the services. And we also not enough for us to scale up the product that we have. And also some of the government bids or bidding kind of things which you are unable to qualify for some reasons. And also we heard that some startup funds from the government, like matching fund or something like that is there, but we are unaware of that. Sure. If that can help us to maybe give some awareness on those lines.
Sure. No, I think you should get in touch with Anudeep. To be able to go compete for some of the large tender-based businesses. So if I were you, I would look at large corporates with good balance sheets, but who do not have a service like yours. And then you become a strategic partner to them, and maybe you give a portion of your profit share to them. And so hence they lend their balance sheet to you. Now that's one way of solving the problem. The fact that you have raised some amount of capital, you have some customers, and it's an interesting space. Certainly you should be able to raise additional set of capital. One of the most important thing for all the entrepreneurs, again, you need to realize whether you're building a good, healthy business. In fact, yesterday I think I tweeted or did a mini blog. So recently in US, there's a club that's got started. It's called the Zebra Club. The Zebra Club is a combination. Members are all entrepreneurs who do not ever want to raise money from venture capitalists. They never want to go to venture capitalists. There's nothing wrong. The reason is these entrepreneurs are building solid companies, but they want to do it very slowly, their own pace, for very long term, right? They don't mind just growing 20% year on year. And they're building a successful business, right? So That's why they said, this VCs, the investors, wreak havoc. The minute they invest capital, they'll push you to do unnecessary things. It happens because someone is investing their money and they're answerable to someone else. So they look for fast growth, they look for returns within 8 to 10 years, they look for certain IRR return rates, and hence they push entrepreneurs to do what it takes to grow a business very fast. So if I'm an entrepreneur, if I analyze my business, and if I know that I'm building a healthy business, let's say 25 crore or 30 crore healthy business over next 5 years, I may never raise capital. There's nothing wrong with not raising capital, but they need to be very aware of what it takes. And you're employing 100 odd people, you're generating profits, you're contributing to the GDP. So which of the business models are venture capital amenable is something first an entrepreneur needs to analyze. Not all business models are VC amenable. Very few are. And those businesses have to grow really fast. They have to have non-linear growth. They need to exit in 8 to 10 years, or they need to become big IPOs. And that's the only reason why investors come and invest. So if you're building your business and if you already have revenues, you may go to angel investors and you may say, look, you can invest in my company today. FD returns are whatever 7-8%. You can tell them that I can give you a 15% IRR, right, which is 2 times the FD. I need certain amount of money for my company. They'll be very happy because all, even high net worth individuals or entrepreneurs want to support other entrepreneurs. So coming back to the matching fund, I think it is in the pipeline. The first investment that will be done by TiE Angels, we're working with Innovation Society. They will have the matching fund. I think for all these startups where the angels are going to write a check, Innovation Society will match that investment, and entrepreneurs can benefit from that. In the end, either the investors who are investing in that company, the angel investors, can buy out the government stake so that government gets that money back, or the entrepreneur can buy the government stake so that government will end up with a rotating fund, an evergreen fund. So that is the construct. This will go into effect fairly soon. Yeah. Please.
Go ahead.
Hi Ravi, back. I just returned from US 1.5 years back, and this is my hometown. So with that passion, I thought the valley requires skilled people. That is the biggest challenge all startups are facing in Vizag. At least I heard from a couple of entrepreneurs here. So we decided to start a skill development center in Vizag, and we did it on our own with our own funding. Everybody thinks NRA has a lot of money, but we don't have. But still, we did not go for any funding or anything because selling idea and pitching idea and making them believe is a very tough job. So we decided to start on our own and test for 2 to 3 years and prove ourselves first before we go somewhere. But the reason here, why I'm here is today to understand how do I get a mentor's support, because when I see the TiE, there is mentor funding and everything, education is there, but I would like to know more about the mentor part here, because I'm not by-born entrepreneur. I'm a software engineer for last 13 years. Now I've got into the different side of the ball game. Now, being a technical person, I have not heard about any of these words that you're talking about, venture capitalists, angel investors, and all those stuff. But now I'm getting used to it from past couple of months, reading my all these blogs. But having a mentor for a startup, somebody who can actually provide a mentorship or like kind of an advice for early startups, so that we'll learn from them, and probably the mistakes can be minimized at the very early stage of startups instead of waiting a couple of years and then figure out ourselves that what we did wrong. So any advice or how can we get that mental support from TiE? Thank you.
So with respect to mentoring, we have charter members from various areas. There are people like you who started as software veterans and then have become entrepreneurs, and there are second generation entrepreneurs and first generation entrepreneurs too. So we have these people as charter members who can help mentoring you based on their experiences and support you, and there are professionals from the software industry who can also guide you in terms of what actually happens in the software IT companies and what they actually need, and giving you insights on those aspects too. So we have some charter members who can obviously help in mentoring your startup. So you can reach out to us and then let us know what is your specific requirement and where are you stuck and which aspect of your journey are you stuck at. Is it related to reaching out to more customers, or how do you scale up your activities, or what other services or the areas that you need to cover in your training aspects and all. So then accordingly we'll connect you to the right person, and they can give you that one-on-one.
Yeah, we have Deepak here, Ravi, we have Shiv. I think there are lots of charter members. There are lots of charter members right here in Vizag. Mentor you if there's a match between what they ask for and what you're looking for. Yeah.
Hello, good evening everyone. My name is Sandeep and I have co-founded a company called Planet. Sure, it's not as simple as it is. You either got to get in touch with someone, speak to someone, and the process, takes a much longer time. So we are here to simplify that process. We are trying to simplify the process of booking more than 300 to 500 trips across the globe in 3 to 5 steps. So that is the vision that we have brought about. And also in the process we have raised close to 1,000 invoices in the last 1 year. So my question for you is, what is the importance of exit strategy? What care has to be taken while planning an exit strategy, be it at the co-founder level or even at the next level? I mean, even if we are trying to get a new co-founder into the company, or when we are trying to raise funds. So that's the question.
Sounds like you. Why are you thinking about exit?
My question specifically was, we are also trying to get another co-founder at this stage. As Rajesh said, maybe we are trying to raise some funds within the family or friend level. So how do we have to plan the exit strategy, even at the other's perspective also, even if we are bringing another co-founder into the company?
So the question is, how do you bring another co-founder into the mix while everything going the way it's going?
Yes, how the exit strategy has to be planned. So I just wanted to understand.
What does it have to do with the co-founder?
No, I think this question is, keeping the exit strategy in mind, should I actually plan my everything right from now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that you may not be getting the answer that you're looking for. Again, this this is the time. You just barely been around doing this stuff for about a year, right? And can I flip your focus to more on what more you could be doing? Being able to create experiences for travelers versus some other platforms out there which are transactional in nature, whether it's Make My Trip, XYZ, ABC. I know that's a good idea, right? And make it as intuitive, as seamless as it can be for end user. The growing economy such as ours, people want to vacation and travel with their families. I think you should harbor more and focus your attention on building the business further and bringing more modes into your business. And if it requires onboarding a couple of other guys in terms of co-founders or a few other key team members, I think you should put your energies there and dream up in terms of building a much bigger business. And if you still insist on getting an answer for exit, maybe Satish can help you.
No, I think look, you can't build a business to sell, neither you can build a business saying it's built to last. Right? Things happen automatically. I think one of the things you need to look at is, for your business to be successful, what skills are you bringing to the table? Is the co-founder going to bring a skill that's critical, that's missing right now?
Yes.
What is that skill? Is it technology, marketing? What is that skill?
It would be marketing.
Okay, so to do brand building and marketing.
Yes.
So you need to realize that any startup, as a function of time, the risk comes down, right? Because predictability increases, customers start paying, so the risk decreases. When the risk decreases, the ownership, the stock that you give also decreases. Early on, the risk is huge. Early days of a company, the risk is very high, so you can't pay, you do not have cash to pay. So the way you pay them is through stock, right? But as your risk reduces over a period of time, you'll collect some cash, you're willing to give cash but not stock. So if that's a critical skill for your company, you should give decent ownership to whoever is coming on board and bring them on board, because by bringing in that skill set, you're going to make the pie bigger. Don't always look at how much I own. You look at what is the value of what I own, right? So a 90% of 10 versus a 50% of 100 is very different. So try and make it bigger, right? And if you get an offer, and if that offer is compelling, and if you all want to exit, that's a very different story.
Thank you so much. And I also acknowledge the attempts that TiE is putting in here, because I think initiatives like this mean a lot for people at Vizag.
No, I think it's all yours. You folks have to do this, right? I think we come and we go, but who can sustain this platform is the local entrepreneurs. I think the more success stories come out of here, I think infrastructure, let me tell you, you could not get any better infrastructure than this. The people who are ready to help, the connectivity, the infrastructure, the access. Now it's question of good teams going to work and creating success. I think that's how success beats success. So you have to go to work. I think all of us can be catalysts and help you, but you are the ones who need to go to work. Yeah.
Hi, I worked with Bank of America in Citi, and I was driving the digitization space. I'm really overwhelmed with your fintech experience, and I would like to understand the kind of problem sets you see in the fintech space in India. If you could throw some light.
Absolutely. I mean, we could go on and on talking about, what focus areas that you should look at. Fintech, I know most talked about, but still a lot to be done in Indian context, and startup in VC's investment continues to pour. Let me just talk about a few things that I'm particularly interested, and some of that is being done in Flipkart as we speak as well. I talked about our mission statement of being able to bring next 100 million customers from tier 2, tier 3, right? How does that happen? There are a few things that we need to work on. One, the obvious thing is, that interaction paradigm that we have on our cell phone. It has to be, catering to various languages and vernacular context and what have you. That's the easier problem. And then, of course, we have done some investment in terms of, creating a unique technology and IP that will make it very amenable for bandwidth constrained users in tier 2, tier 3, right? Again, a text all sorted out, right? When everything else sort of in place, and now we brought access to commerce for these underserved, unserved, one glaring thing that's missing in this puzzle is affordability. Right? Sadly, majority of what I'm alluding to do not have a formal credit bureau score. Right? The CIBIL score that we all come to understand and accept is only made available for a small percentage. Only about 20 million users have our consumers have a formal CIBIL score, and that number is getting better, but it's still far from where it should be. So clearly an opportunity, right? How do we actually go after this underserved, unserved segment, which runs into a few hundreds of millions, and get some understanding of those customers from the vantage point of being able to underwrite, and bring a parallel bureau score that will help the new age NBFCs to be able to lend, and would be a humongous mission. Now, if you can get there, a lot of good things will happen. You're truly contributing in terms of meeting their aspirations, right? Which is the case right now. While they have access to commerce, and not many of them are able to afford it. So that's one. How do you do it? There are a lot of stuff. You have digital platforms where we have some touch points around these customers. Can we leverage that data? And you also have to look at other offline channels. How do you datafy those offline touch points and bring all of that together and come up with the next generation underwriting platform? All right. The second thing, even the insurance, right? While we have some 20-odd insurance companies in life, and maybe the equal number in general, and today, the insurance, whether it's protection for home, health, and auto, or the life, largely underpenetrated. We're talking about less than 3%, and the West, the nations such as US, we are talking about close to 15 to 20%. China, it's about 9%. And the reason for such low penetration again is the very complex products that we have, very hard to sort of understand, and then it's further compounded by the fact that we have this middleman. Agencies drive these products to the consumer, so the manufacturer of this product is far removed from the end user, end customer. He doesn't know what end customer wants, and you don't even know how the agencies sell this product to the consumer, and then right off the bat, there's a distance created between a producer and a consumer, and then there's, how many times you've gone through this experience yourself. You bought some insurance product and the remorse kicks in right away. Right? What the heck happened? Why did I even buy this product? Right? So the point there is again, how do you disintermediate these guys and be able to sort of go to these users across various needs and come up with these protection mechanisms that are very different from what it is today. So what it means the simplification of products, starting with clear understanding of the customers, and then simplification of products, and then being able to underwrite again using data. If Satish is this and he does this and he's so different from ABC, there is an underwriting platform today which writes insurance premium. They're basically done by a bunch of underwriters looking at 3-4 common signals that are largely common denominator. They're not really spending time understanding each one deeply enough, right? So can we actually, again bring the data into play and do this underwriting using AI and machine learning? And again, insurance, the people talk about actuary science and so on and so forth. That's again a very antiquated way of doing, right? End of the day, it's about knowing about the customer in terms of data and the bringing the past data and also bringing the science in terms of AML to do the right underwriting for the future as well, right? And so these are the kind of disruptions. And thirdly, I would also say the experience aspect in insurance and in the lending space, it's collections today. Since we are talking about bite-sized lending and smaller size protection plans, you probably have to, in order to make a viable business, you have to do a few tens of millions of lending constructs or insurance products, insurance underwriting. So the way to do it is through a digital platform, and both at the time of customer acquisition, also use the same online platforms for servicing post the fact, be it collections or claims experience and so on and so forth, right? So anybody who's kind of looking at this entire life cycle, our entire customer journey, whether it's lending or insurance, and keeping in view the tier 2, tier 3, the next 200, 300 million customers, and wearing this lens of digital channels and data and technology, you are most likely to disrupt, and you are onto something humongously big, right?
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. At what stage can you bring to the market, or during the early stages of ID?
Even early stages you can get. Yeah, you don't need to wait. It depends on what is the area where you need mentoring. Yeah.
My question is, how does crowdfunding work in India? Because some companies are going to Japan. They're rising through ICOs. So does it work in India? As you are from
ICOs, yeah, I can. No, I think ICOs have slowed down as we all securities offerings. It's not initial coin offerings anymore. Crowdfunding, there are platforms in India. There's something called Let's Venture. And there's one more for social impact called Wishberry. If you have a good idea, if you go subscribe to the platform and then if you publish your idea, the investors will look at your plan. If they're interested, they'll connect with you. So they do have reasonable traction. They're the one mechanism of fundraising.
Good evening, sir. This is John Jeremiah, co-founder of Adonic Incorporation. Our startup deals with automation using IoT and artificial intelligence. As a technical member and a student myself, I find myself having to find a balance between all these phases.
I'll let Ravi answer, but what automation? I mean, IoT, AI, ML is very generic. What are you trying to?
Smart schools. We use IoT devices that can connect practically every electronic devices. For now, we have Google Homes and Google automated things that can work only with specific devices that are built to use Google Assistant. But what we are working on is devices that can use AI to connect every electrical devices, be it a mobile phone or a water heater or anything. We are developing such devices that can implement AI to connect them. So we've been working on some hotels like Alka Hotel at Nainital and Udaipur, and we've been generating good revenue. But the thing is, we also need skilled people to develop more and more. And we find an issue in development, that is, skilled people generally look for pay. But as a startup, we find ourselves unable to pay in huge amounts. Practically the way they are paid in other companies like Google or IBM or Microsoft, we aren't able to pay so much, but still we need them with us. So how do we do that?
I think you want to answer.
Yeah, you need to be a little creative, I guess. I think Rajesh mentioned it in the very beginning, right? One of the many things that the entrepreneur has to sort of internalize as he embarks on this path and pursuit is to be able to sort of come up with a compelling, inspiring story to folks who want to look at it, right? And I think you need to get that story in place. Assuming that that's in place, and you are able to get a feet in the door or a foot in the door, then if it is more often than not, and the problem statement is one such thing, and they also sort of understand the big picture and what it can be. That's where you need to paint the vision and the long-term roadmap and what when all this comes together, what this whole venture can be. So they need to be bought into that big picture story. Some people might buy into it. In spite of that, some who cannot sort of fathom or foresee that as much as you do will compare and contrast you with a few other players in the market who seemingly better pay masters at this juncture, right? So then you need to be a little more creative. I mean, at least in the formative stage, you need to be able to sort of go back to the different source, right? It doesn't have to be a lateral heist. You have to go to there's a diamond in the rough elsewhere too, right? Oftentimes we have this propensity to go to tier 1 schools and or marquee companies and who have demonstrated the similar skill and competency and in a few years, and that's only one I will hang my hat on and believe that who can deliver the stuff for me. You are at a point where you can't afford that, right? And you need to sort of look for a plan B. Plan B doesn't necessarily be a bad one. You just have to broaden your perspective and believe that you can find that talent, because at this juncture you're not looking at few hundreds of folks. folks. You're probably good if you get a handful, right? And you cast your net wide and go very targeted. There will be some schools, the entrepreneurship, whatever, create this stuff, commit some of your time. You can do marketing and management and all that once you have a viable product, right? So you need to focus, get your focus right, at least in the beginning. And you realize at this point you have a decent enough product fit, you have an MVP going. Now you need more hands on the deck, right? So now that's where you need to focus. How do I get hold of right talent? Cast your net wide, go to these underserved, neglected schools, but they have great talent as well, right? Which means you need to spend a good chunk of your own time to onboard them, get them up to speed. And then allow them to fail don't expect them to be providing the same throughput and same efficiency like some of the others. You realize, that's a far better thing to live with than, waiting for, your Trojan horse and then, and not, even when you find one not being able to afford, there's an opportunity cost there as well. So I think it will play out okay, if you just, shift your mind. It's a mindset change. And then you'll find some, and there'll be a time when you can afford, when the business gets to a point where there's enough acknowledgement and there's angel funding or a VC funding, then you can do all the other things as well.
So
what you said, what you are going through is not one of a kind. Most entrepreneurs go through that, and so you should draw confidence that the stuff that I suggested is a time-tested one. You just have to broaden your perspective in terms of talent hiring.
Sir, I would also like to ask if the strength of a startup lies in the numbers working in it. Means a large number of people working in a startup, does that make it successful?
No. It's again. I don't even know how to respond to that question. Right? It's never,
because I've been dealing with people who say recruit more.
Absolutely, that's a ridiculous advice. Recruit why? Why? The number is a byproduct of what you want to do, right? And you have to have a clarity of what you want to do and what kind of skill and competency. At some point in time, you can punt all that aside and just focus on number and assume that each one will do something amazing and serendipity transfer. No, that doesn't happen. You need to have a clear understanding what you want, and to begin with, actually, I would rather work hard to find that rock star, right, who can actually make a difference and who can challenge you every step of the way and be your mirror and pick up whatever that you are not able to take on in terms of load, and join you at the hip, and if not a founder and a founding member, those versus having many people, even if you can afford, if you have more people not paying attention to the quality or not having a real good regard to why you want so many people, your management, your bandwidth is going just towards managing those people, and for a very little gain or no gain.
So how do I make them realize the importance of my product? For example, we have smart TVs today, right? That can be controlled with artificial intelligence systems. But the thing is, with the devices we have made, we can control even a CRT TV, or be it a large chunk of old junk. We can control practically any electronic device. So, but people don't realize it so quickly. They don't understand it. How do you make them realize it? Because there are already so many smart systems, so many automated systems available. Why should we choose only you?
I think, Rajesh, I don't know if you guys paid attention, Rajesh said one thing, right? He was probably in a conversation with another smart bunch of entrepreneurs, and they were onto some idea, and Rajesh was the first one to say, that seemed a great idea from outside, but going in, my experience was very different, to the extent, I acknowledge that, I don't have the right product, and or the product that not well understood by the customer. So there's one set of entrepreneurs said, customers didn't get it. Another one said, I have a complex in a product, they didn't see the difference between what I brought to the table to what exists, right? So I think, you need to be in the second camp, right? Let's accept the fact that, customers are confused with your product. They're not able to differentiate yours from the bunch that's out there. So you, right there, your problem statement. You said it yourself. There's a problem from the vantage point of customer. He doesn't see the value that you bring to the table. So either you think you've created differentiation and the customer is thinking that differentiation doesn't hold water or bring any good to me. I'm okay with what I have. Hence, I'm looking for this common denominator, and you are one among many, and your incremental differentiation is not something that I'm looking forward to. Or, you probably fail to bring to the fore the incremental value as the customer sees it, in terms of value, So that you need to bridge the gap, And the third is basically during that interaction, it's entirely possible that there's still an opportunity for innovation by deeply understanding what customer wants, and that need is not yet served by incumbents, but it's not what you bring into the table, something else, So one of these three. It has to be one of these three. And customer is always right. If you spend enough time with him and try to understand, and it will fall into one of these three, And you have to figure out, where your product falling in today and address accordingly.
A lot of times we get confused. We think it's management. It is about decision making. It's not so much about management, or even as engineers, it's really about decision making. If you know your product really well, and you know who is your customer, and like the problem you're trying to solve, I have a lot of customers, they're willing to pay, I need to know. Just write questions for yourself. Is the problem, if you've already developed a product, is it manufacturing, and you need capital for manufacturing? Or is it that you need to develop new code for each of the verticals, the gadgets that you're going to monitor and manage? What exactly is the problem, I think don't be very generic, be very specific. Only when you have that clarity, ask those simple questions, answer those simple questions, then it becomes very, very clear. Otherwise, you'll just be going in circles. And not having certainty is okay, but not having clarity is a big mistake for any entrepreneur. Clarity is a must. No entrepreneur has certainty, because what happens tomorrow nobody knows. But having clarity is a must, because so many more lives are dependent on those entrepreneurs. Yeah? Okay, Anudeep, we're done?
Yeah, so due to paucity of time, we'll be closing the Q&A.
No worries, I think, they can all network and...
So you can take up the questions during the networking after this. So I invite Manish to take over the proceedings from you.
Good evening everybody. So we have a surprise for all the startups over here. It is something that AP Innovation Society has been thinking, and we are planning to launch a series of talks in association with a lot of our ecosystem partners. So we are titling it as Sunrise Talks, and we thought what better an occasion could be than this to launch this series of talks. And so I'd also like to invite now Vinny Patra, who is the CEO of Innovation Society, AP Innovation Society, to come on the dais. And I request our distinguished speakers to please join him in unveiling the posters of Sunrise Talks. Sunrise Talks will be a series of talks which will be conducted every fortnightly, and will be beginning soon. And all the startups with APIs, all the startups in Vizag, and more of speakers from our state, from our country, and even international speakers, both physically and virtually.
Dhanwan, Anikra.
So, can you please?
So whenever the time distinction comes, it's Sunrise Talks and that's very nice. Great idea. One umbrella. Absolutely. All around innovation. Nice. That was a question.
Dhanwan frame lo cost.
Mr. Rai. Go ahead. Thank you so much for taking your time out and for coming and doing this. For me also?
Yes, for you also.
Then ask Anudeep, come and join. Hold this. Shravani will hold it from the other side.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have refreshments and have your networking and talk to the guests during the refreshments. Thank you.